Righty. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I've actually figured out how to make them legible. So whoop, now you can actually see them. So that will help hopefully. Already it is 10. So we'll get started here. So we are going to. Yes, yeah, Michaela, you're good. You can give your speech this way if we get to yours. So rock on. And so I wanted to show you what I've done to the agenda. Last night I spent some time just trying to update it. Sorry it took me until last night, but my entire family got the flu for Thanksgiving. What a great present. I'm not contagious anymore. But it meant that I didn't have a lot of energy and we had to cancel Thanksgiving and all that fun stuff. So, and so what I've done is after we get through our symposia for today, we're in the middle of our first symposium, and then we'll have a second symposium. Then we're going to go to our business meeting and we'll vote on the removal of the homosexuality. And then we also have a proposal from Ann Anastasi about adding some new committees. And we have people running for president for the next year. And then we'll have a new convention year where we start addressing different issues. So, and again, we can always still add stuff in, but I wanted to give us a chance to at least have one election in the middle so we can change over president. So, do you all feel like you need a few minutes to powwow with your people, or do you want to dive right in? See lots of shrugs. Let's just dive right in. All right. So first up, again, we're in the middle of our symposium. So we heard from Barbara Giddings last Monday. And so next up we have Dr. H. Anonymous. Gotta go for it. Sorry. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're pretending that we're finding out. Oh, they should be able to. What's that?
You can start whatever.
Yep, we're good to go.
I'll start my speech by saying that I am a homosexual and I'm a psychologist. While there are many of you who believe that it should not be possible for someone to be both, I'm here to describe what it's like to be a homosexual psychologist in today's climate. I ask that you do not focus on my individual identity, as I could be any of the over 100 psychologists that are registered at the convention right now. And today we'll be attempting to speak for all of the gay members of the APA. So my identity should not matter as much as the words that I'm here to say. The gay members of the APA have found camaraderie in each other, but it's time, I think we can all agree, especially all the gay members of the APA, that it's time for somebody to speak up in front of the entire committee. I would like to describe the treatment of homosexual psychologists by comparing it, especially with the time we are in right now, comparing it to the treatment of people of color in the country at this moment. Firstly, as homosexuals in our field, we must know our place and make efforts to not overstep or overshare. If we wish to be treated with the same professional respect and given the same benefits as our heterosexual counterparts, we have to be mindful about how much of ourselves we share with our superiors. We're forced to abandon the gay community because being seen as part of it could potentially cost us everything that we've worked for. In addition, we have to prove ourselves to be healthy homosexuals by holding ourselves to unfair standards of what society or the APA deems to be acceptable. As of right now, the APA is treating the idea of a healthy homosexual like it's an impossibility. Even after completing analyses and tests to prove our plasticity, we're disregarded as a special case if we are even given that. and still not given the respect of most of our heterosexual counterparts. Finally, most homosexual psychologists must work harder and longer than their heterosexual counterparts. We have to work harder to prove ourselves and often pursue our work over our own personal or romantic interests. Institutions have shown this time and time again, especially in my cases, personally, I've lost 2 jobs before, which is why I'm here anonymously now. We risk everything that we work for if we were to reveal our identity to our superiors or the institutions we work for, who we spend most of our time working for. Overall, the homosexual psychologist has to deal with the constant threat of discrimination, similar to how people of color existed in this society before we even started opening our doors to them. This is why I implore my fellow gay members of the APA who are not disguised today to begin making waves within our community. Of course, I'm not asking that you put your career on the line, but simply speak up whenever you hear coworkers or superiors engaging in discriminatory talk or behavior. Give homosexual patients fair and impartial treatment, and form a community amongst ourselves so that we can support each other as members of the gay community and the psychologists. We may lose a job, an internship, or an opportunity in our efforts, but we run an even bigger risk by not accepting humanity in all of it and with all of its differences. Understanding these differences helps us to do our jobs as psychologists and increases our capacity to understand what our patients are going through. It would be a severe loss to the field of psychology to go against the progress that we see in society today. And designating homosexuality as a mental disorder does just that.
All right, questions for Dr. Anonymous? Comments and supports or against? All right, but you're getting away scot free. Shock them, Dr. Anonymous.
Let's see.
All right, next up we have Dr. Hooker. Not the Dr. Hooker who's in, sorry, Dr. Hooker. You're all right. You're all right. Okay.
At the present time, homosexuality is listed in the DSM as mental illness, implying that homosexuals have a different psychopathy than their heterosexual counterparts. My research has been the first to test the assumption that homosexual men are mentally ill, and the majority of my research has focused on pinpointing this difference in psychopathy and its vastness. In an attempt to find this difference, I have extensively studied the social lives and habits of homosexual men. The conclusions I have drawn from these observations can be more extensively studied in my article, The Journal of Psychology, in my article in the Journal of Psychology, entitled A Preliminary Analysis of Group Behavior of Homosexuals, and The Adjustment of Male Over Homosexual, in the Journal of Physical Techniques. The important findings that have led me here today can be summarized into the statement that homosexuals are not mentally ill, and I propose that we take homosexuality out of the DSM. Most of my observations have taken place in larger cities, where multiple different considerably sized social groups of homosexual men can be found. Through these observations, I have found that many of these groups hold their members to a certain set of standards where they are expected to act a certain way in order to continue to be a part of the social group. However, despite these expectations, it is still desirable to be a part of them as they provide support to their members and help ease some of the anxieties that come with such a stressful and often separated lifestyle. We can see the same sort of behavior reflected in heterosexual friend groups, which are created for the emotional support that they bring to life. These same types of relationships are needed within homosexual groups because of the victimization they perceive themselves to be facing. These feelings are common among many members of minority groups and cause homosexuals to feel the need to defend against the heterosexuality the victimizations coming from. These individuals are often labeled as having obsessive compulsive personalities, and these excessive behaviors often center around their homosexuality as a defense against heterosexuality. Some of the most common attitudes perceived in homosexuals are passivity and dependence, and these are also deemed to be yet another defense against heterosexuality. Despite all of this, through my research, I have found that non-Christian homosexuals, meaning they are not in treatment for any psychological disorders, nor do they have any diagnoses, are in fact not mentally disordered, as there is no indication of a difference in psychopathy between non-patient homosexual males and heterosexual males. In fact, the 1964 Midtown Manhattan study has suggested that any perceived differences in mental health are actually a result of the ostracism they face from society, rather than any differences in psychopathy. Here, I would like to also note that in my own study, the adjustment of the male overt homosexual, I compared 30 heterosexual men and 30 homosexual men of similar age and education level, and their responses to Warsaw protocols and the thematic most interesting part of this research was that when asked to identify which test responses belong to homosexuals rather than heterosexual, people aiding me in my research could not distinguish the two at any level deeper than chance. Like any other human being, a social pariah causes these being a social pariah causes these men to feel intense loneliness, which will begin to present itself in symptoms of depression and anxiety. By including homosexuality in DSM, we are only contributing to this problem and making the mental health of each individual worse, when our goal as an organization should be to help you lessen the mental struggle of this society. I implore you to take homosexuality out of the DSM and allow this minority group a relief from their mental strain, as they are truly no psychologically different than their heterosexual counterparts.
Comment. People can have something.
You remember studying years and only included. I have one of my studies in cases like observations in like entire cities, so there's a lot more. There's a lot more participants in that study, but I have considered expanding the adjustment of male over homosexual studies to a larger group of people.
Have you considered like, I know the law studies that I want to bring out have been about city of homosexual men. Have you considered at all like extending the no participants going to their custody how that?
Sorry.
Or he asked if you are also considering women in your research.
Yes, these initial studies have focused on men mainly just because they hold more of a higher place in society at the moment. Yes.
Not a question, it's an observation based on what you've said so far. Great speech, by the way, but I have to disagree with you on saying that these individuals suffer from mental illness or mental health, so to speak, as mental health itself cannot be observed as is something. I do not deny that there may be underlying issues along with these diagnoses or whatever, along with heterosexual, homosexual, but again, to reiterate that strongly disagree with the mental illness fact and the mental health as something that is just a non-observable entity in a sense. I'll throw it out there.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, thank you so much. So I don't have to get up, do you mind just going up and scrolling up the agenda, there we go, wow. So technologically advanced, y'all. All right, so next we have another symposium talking about equity issues, and the first up we have Dr. Bud Marmer.
Hello, I'm Jen Marmor. I'm a psychiatrist who has worked closely with homosexual patients. I want to talk about the view of homosexuality and how it's been treating people. Many patients that wanted me to cure them to be heterosexual, but soon enough I saw that techniques that I've used were not useful for that. I tried psychoanalyzing them, which should have worked, but it didn't. And after hearing about evidence of this study on the bias of homosexual individuals, I came to my own conclusion that homosexuality is not an illness and it's not curable. The reason these people suffer from anxiety, depression, and confusion about their identity is the social pressure and the false theories. We cannot base our studies just by a few homosexual individuals that we have therapy with. It is important to note that there are homosexual individuals that are happy with their sexuality. I believe that mental health and homosexuality are not directly correlated, and there are other factors that take place. I would like to give an example on Project Idea about homosexuality. He said that homosexuality is no different than a foot fetish. Well, how well studied is this idea? How did he come up with this series, and did he have any proof? The proof I have for now is that homosexuality is not curable, and I can base that on the many studies that I have. It is true that homosexual individuals have more mental health challenges than heterosexuals, but this is not because of their sexuality, it's because they're not accepted as normal human beings. The reason my patients come to me is because they don't want to feel labeled as ill patients. They just want to be accepted in the society. Now let's imagine what would happen if we did not call them this. Would there still be anxiety, stress, and not being accepted and feeling abnormal? Or would they feel like heterosexual individuals that we would call normal? I think they won't be as confused about their identity, and they would be more at peace with themselves. I just suggest that homosexuality should be taken out of the new DSM to actually help homosexual individuals.
Comment for Dr. Marmer. You shocked them into silence, Dr. Marmer. Okay, I see her up there, but hopefully.
I am Dr. Analyst John Siegel, and I'm the former president of the American Academy of Psychoanalysis. I was a medical officer during World War II and did research on combat fatigue, which is now known as post-traumatic stress disorder. Due to my research and experience with the war, I discussed PTSD in my book entitled New and Show. I'm here to advocate for homosexuality to be removed from the DSM altogether. Homosexuality was first added to the DSM in 1852 and classified as a sociopathic personality disorder. In the DSM-2, which was published in 1968, it was categorized as a sexual deviation. There are plenty of theories tied to homosexuality, such as if people are born gay or not, and it's a feeling that develops as we become an adult. Another theory is that people become homosexual due to traumatic childhood experiences, excessive or lack of parenting from parents, or that people will outgrow it as they get older. However, homosexuality occurs naturally and may be seen at all different stages of life. Depending on your environment, you're able to respond to it in certain ways. Some people feel like they have to hide it, yet some have the ability to embrace it. It is not a mental illness and shouldn't be treated as one just because it goes against gender norms. I believe that because everyone is entitled to their own opinions and ways of life, we shouldn't judge others for who they are in the sexual preferences. It is not something that should be generalized because it's a different experience for everyone. The same way heterosexuality may result in different outcomes. With that being said, I don't believe that homosexuality should be classified as a mental illness and that it's not curable using treatments such as electroshock therapy. Instead of trying to change the ways that homosexuals think, I feel we should take this as an opportunity to learn more about it and be open to understanding. This is why I believe we should help homosexuals instead of hurting them or trying to change their beliefs and choices, which is why homosexuality should be taken off the DSM and shouldn't be classified as a mental illness. Being homosexual isn't a disease or sickness, so we shouldn't treat it as one and shame others for their difference. Although I feel strongly about homosexuality because it lives on the DSM, I'm willing to discuss other subcategories and different treatments.
All right, questions, comments?
Well, because I think it's like a little weird how whenever we reference. Like a mental illness or disorder, it has like this very negative stigmatized connotation. And I feel like this goes against our job, like as psychologists in general.
Other questions, comments? Okay, I'm gonna come up to the front. And see if hopefully the Zoom is working for Trinity, who is Kenneth Clark, our next speaker. All right, Trinity, are you able to unmute and talk?
Yeah, I don't know if y'all can hear me, but yeah, I can unmute.
Yay! Okay, cool. All righty, so you can go ahead whenever you are ready.
Okay. To start off, I'll just first want to introduce myself. Kenneth Clark. I grew up in Harlem, New York, and earned my doctorate at Columbia University. Was one of the first Black graduates to get a bachelor's degree. I like to start off with talking about the racial inequality. While growing up in Harlem, I've seen just how much racism has affected our children. Really, racial issues are psychologically damaging. My wife and I, Mamie Clark, started conducting these doll studies in order to really test my thought. In these studies, we found that Black kids preferred the white dolls over the brown dolls when given, or when said to pick which one had a more positive effect, they thought. They saw that white dolls were more positive than the brown dolls. And to me, this just goes to show that children's egos are damaged. Black children's egos are damaged due to how they are treated and how they see other people like them are treated or like us are treated. This also supports my ideas concerning the fragility of the human ego. My idea of the pathos of power suggests that a power competitive person may be driven by a need to be accepted by others, but in reality, it is still not enough power to hide the actual inner powerlessness that they have. There's a cycle of self-defeating obsession that gets strengthened due to such a big drive for power that blocks you from feeling emotion. All of this suggests that wanting to have so much power, for example, within like the advocates of our Black power, we want to have so much power, want to do so much for our people, but it actually drains us so much when there's a real indication of powerlessness. And also, I want to touch on homosexuality and how like categorizing it as a mental illness can also be damaging to the ego. So this just goes back to how homosexuals are treated just as bad as like us as Black people are treated also. And referring this to a mental illness can just have such a big toll on people and how they feel about themselves. And again, this just refers back to trying to be powerful for your people. Like if you see a group that's like you is getting beat down, you want to be powerful for them. But in reality, inside, you feel powerlessness because you have no actual control over what happens as far as that idea. And overall, those who have been defeated by like negative judgments of others all the time just struggle with the minimum amount of self-esteem to really function as a human being. Right, and that's all.
Questions or comments for Dr. Clark? All right, thank you, Dr. Clark. Okay, so now our president, Dr. Miller, will run our business meeting. Dr. Miller, all that means is you stand at the front and have people talk. So if you need help, the game master is here as your backup. So the first thing we have in our business meeting is a proposal. We just call on people now, basically. I was gonna say that on
Bruce, or
You just, follow what's up there. And so like we could start with, Hooker presenting her proposal. I think this was you that wrote this. Someone else wrote it maybe, I don't know.
I didn't write.
Okay, someone else wrote this proposal, so I was wrong that it was Hooker. I didn't actually, but obviously there are several people who could have written it, so I'll take off Ariana's name. But so what happens in a business meeting is that the proposal is presented. And then people need to speak for and against it. So your character, if this is an issue that your character cares about, you need to make sure you speak for or against it. And then, when everyone's had a chance to talk, then we actually vote. So,
That.
oh, there we go. Great. Do you have a speech associated with it? You put together?
Am I supposed to go before the business meeting or after?
Well, if this is your proposal, then you can go now.
Okay.
So sorry about that. Awesome. So we now know who the author of the proposal is. Again, sorry, y'all, I had the flu, so like my brain wasn't there. All right, so we'll have a speech to introduce the proposal here.
I was staring at that for a long time. I was like, that kind of looks like what I wrote.
That's funny. Well, thank you, Dr. Scissor.
Okay. My name is Robert Spitzer. I am from White Plains, New York. I'm a psychiatrist. I graduated with a bachelor's degree from Cornell University in 1953, and then graduated from NYU School of Medicine in 1957. I am a professor in the psychiatry department at the Columbia Center for Psychomedical Training and Research. I've written multiple journals on topics including childhood schizophrenia and reading disabilities. I also worked with patients in psychoanalysis before I turned into research on depression and diagnostic interviewing things. I turned away from psychoanalysis work because it's too abstract and theoretical. I believe that emotions and the human mind should be evaluated through systematic and analytical methods. I did attend the gay APA in 1972, and I met with some of the gay activists there. I believe that homosexuality should be removed from the diagnostic and statistical manual. I believe that the label of mental illnesses or disease should be replaced with mental disorders and should be on the subset scale as medical disorders and treated as such. We need to focus on the symptoms that patients are having instead of what the cause is. Two people can experience a different traumatic event, but they react in the same way. This concludes that it's the symptoms that we in fact need to treat. And if we focus on the symptoms, we will find that homosexuals only have one similar symptom across the board, which is their attraction to the same sex. Having attraction and or love is not a medical disorder or a disease that is affecting one's mental health. There have been studies done, such as by Dr. Hooker, where she compared psychological test results between gay men and heterosexual men and found no psychological disturbances in the group of gay men. Saying that it is an illness creates a negative connotation around sexuality, and continuing to have it on the DSM does more harm than good when treating the patient because you are labeling them ill when they are not. And a misdiagnosis is not something that psychologists, psychiatrists, or doctors should strive for. And to be listed as a mental disorder, it has to regularly cause distress or impair the patient's ability to function properly in social setting. And it has been proven that it does not and needs to be removed. I propose that we replace the section of the DSM for homosexuality with sexual orientation disturbance. Sexual orientation disturbance opens the doors to allow homosexuals to gain treatment and any issues they may be having revolving around their sexual orientation, but make it clear that them being a homosexual in itself is not the disorder. This section of the DSM will create something for homosexuals who may be distressed by their orientation, but the ones who are content in their sexuality will not be affected.
All right, questions, comments, we can start debate.
Do you believe that it should still be in the DSM though? Like, because for straight people, it's not in the DSM. So why do you think that it should be DSM, that same, I forget the word that you use. You wanted to change it to something else, on the top you said.
So I propose that we have the sexual orientation disturbance.
Why do you think disturbance? Like, that sounds like it's something disturbed or like bothered, yeah.
I think because of the discrimination that homosexuals are having in today's society. That they might feel disturbed to learn that they are homosexual themselves, and that can be distressing for them. But other people are perfectly content in their sexuality, and so they are not disturbed by the orientation they have.
Okay.
The sexual orientation disturbance also includes heterosexuals if they are considered that they are heteronormative and they instead strive to be homosexual, they can also be treated for the same.
Other questions for Dr. Fritz? Thank you. All right, so Dr. Spitzer has a proposal on the floor and we need people to speak in favor and against it.
Speaking in favor, I agree with everything he said, and I think. Especially with the part that just taking off homosexual off the DSM and also changing the wording that we use from like mental illness to mental disorder. Because I feel like a lot of times, especially in this case, when there's something that we're like thinking about adding, you can call it a mental disorder. Like those words indicate that like the condition itself affects the patient's quality of life. And I feel like in homosexuality, it's not the condition itself, it's people's reaction to the condition that affects quality of life. So I agree with that.
Would anyone else like to speak in favor of that? Sorry.
Yeah, I agree with, I do agree with the changing of it now that I understand more. And also like she said something about looking at the symptoms and not the, like, yeah, so I agree with what she said.
I'm also in favor of the same reason. It's gonna be more inclusive, I think, and take a lot of stress off of homosexual people.
Anyone else like to speak in favor or against?
In favor, because of the same reasons. And I think the vibe, bias, and they're very stressed, and want to this make it better for them.
I'm against. I feel that if we change the wording and this is a step toward removing it and we remove it, then I can't fix this as well as they deserve to be treated. I would have to agree. I am not in favor of this. I feel as though our patients will not be able to get the treatment that they need or taken seriously and this is really convenient for them.
Other folks who'd like to speak in favor or against?
I think that the bias that is provided by actually naming homosexuality in the DSM is more harmful to patients, especially if we're trying to group them together under one definition. It's possible that it takes away from actually treating the patient and their needs, what is the person that day to day.
Around the meeting. It's gonna be easier so I can see everybody. Okay, I think I saw Dr. Vaz next, and then go to Dr. Legal. Go ahead.
I will vote in favor to remove, as I believe homosexuality is an observable behavior, whereas calling it a mental illness kind of takes away from that fact, and calling it mental illness will then, yeah, just, you know, I think it really just, I lost train of thought, you know what I'm trying to say?
It happens to the best of people. Yeah,
Hope that made sense.
Dr. Spiegel. Yeah,
outdated, but, I just want to say I'm in favor as well. I just feel like the homosexuality. Wording as if it's a mental illness, puts such a negative connotation on something that shouldn't be, a negative, like, shouldn't have that connotation for which, so, yeah.
Anybody else? Anybody on Zoom want to unmute or put something in the chat? Want to make sure everybody gets the chance to speak. Okay, well, if folks are have nothing else to say, I sense we are ready to vote. So those who are in favor of this proposal by Dr. Spitzer, which I will Spitzer, I'm not sure, which I will recap. So we would remove homosexuality as a diagnosis, but keep, what was the way you phrased it, like problem with sexuality, something like that?
Oh, you mean the.
Like what would stay in, yeah.
The sexual orientation disturbance?
There we go. Sexual orientation disturbance would stay in. This could apply to anyone of any sexual orientation. So those in favor, please raise your hand and let me count you. Great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. And those opposed are very good natured, good gaming enemies. All right. And then anyone abstain, I think everybody voted. So awesome. So this passes. That means homosexuality will be removed from the DSM. Now, Dr. Anastasi, I realize we have not done any prep for this. Would you like me to move this proposal to the next business meeting? Or do you want to propose it now? So if you want to do it now, we can, or we can do it later. It's totally up to you. Yes. It's okay. I promise. I'll be right here. I'm literally not moving, so.
Sit down.
Yeah, you can sit up here if you want to as well. That's fine. Oh, that's okay. We're stopping after the campaign speeches, so.
Hello, I am Anastasi, and I would like to propose 2 committees that will uplift the well-deserved credit for services and input into the psychology. The first committee will be the Committee on Women in Psychology, which will focus on the issues facing women in the profession. And second will be the Committee on the Psychology of Women, which will focus on studying women's minds as a specialization within the discipline. These committees will work to bring women's needs into policy, informing policy formation, and work to increase research on learning more information on women and how their psychology works. They will also check on other institutions to see and help improve the involvement of women in leadership positions. These committees will consist of 6 members elected in staggered terms of 3 years. And the goals of these committees is to promote the health and well-being of women, eliminate the discrimination of women, elimination of the discrimination women face in the discipline, and increase the visibility of women's scholarship.
Questions or comments for Dr. Anastasi? You can go back to your seat. All right, so this is a proposal that would form 2 different committees. The Committee on Women in Psychology and the Committee on the Psychology of Women. The latter would become a standing division of the APA. Who would like to speak in favor of this motion? Who would like to speak against this motion? All right. Oh, do we have something?
Speak against.
All right.
So speaking against, not because I'm sexist. But because there is no clear distinguish of this field from other areas like social psych and other small branches. And the name itself is very separatist and exclusion. Everything else.
I want to speak in favor, because I feel like especially with the discussion we had before this about when we were citing studies and everything. I just noticed that a lot of the studies just didn't even involve women in their participant group, and like, we just don't have data on women versus research on women in terms of psychology. And it makes it hard to treat women as psychologists if we have nothing to base it off of. If we're basing all of their treatments off of men. I feel like they should have their own division at this point in the world of psychology.
Yeah, also going on with that, it's like, I think it's really hard for women to get diagnoses that are correct to their psychology when everything, all the research is based on men.
Anyone else would like to speak against? Anyone else like to speak in favor? All right, hearing none. I sense we are ready to vote. So again, we are creating two committees, the Committee on Women in Psychology to study or support women who are actually part of the field, and then the Committee on the Psychology of Women, which would address some of the issues related to them not being in research. So this is one that you can decide if your character would support or not. It might not be as clear as some of our other issues. And if you're not sure, you can just abstain. So all those in favor. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And all those against. All right, 2. All right. And then I know that's the same number. Oh, it looks like we got something in the chat. We got another person in favor. Awesome. So we got 12 and nobody abstained. Awesome. Alrighty, so now we're gonna have very brief campaign speeches because we actually only have one person running for each office. And this happens sometimes within professional organizations. So, and you don't even have to come up here, Dr. Spiegel, but if you just want to give a very brief campaign speech from where you're sitting.
I guess maybe we're not generalized.
Great, thank you. Sounds like we will have a very engaged vice president. All right, and running for president, Dr. Anastasia.
Basically, I want her to include women in having more say in leadership, and also make a movement for gender neutral language and just making sure that both genders are represented in both research and policy.
All right, fantastic. All right, so we have a new president and vice president. And I waited because now this will just be our presidential address. So, okay, stepping out of game mode. Excellent job today, good debate. We got through one of the tougher issues and now we're gonna start getting into some of the more niche issues. Which you have to decide how your person will feel based on kind of reading between the lines. Wednesday, come to class, but we're not doing the game. It's another day for you to regroup, to think about these issues coming up, to ask me questions about your character, things along those lines. And then we'll get back into the game on Friday. But do come to class on Wednesday so that you can network with people, ask me questions, all that good stuff. It'll be a work day. Great job so far, y'all. This is great. And thank you for participating on Zoom today, guys. That worked out really well.